Hey there, Knicks fans. We're back with our partners over at FANATICS Sportsbook, and they're making it easy to score big with exclusive Thanksgiving and Black Friday rewards. This Thanksgiving, you'll get 2 same-game parlay 50% profit boost tokens and a 25% anytime touchdown scorer profit boost to use on any of the 3 pro football games this Thursday. Keep the winning streak going on Black Friday with 3 25% same-game parlay profit boost tokens to use across the NBA slate and a 50% college football profit boost. Plus, join Fanatics and enter the Black Friday FANCASH drop for free. It's your weekly chance to win up to $10,000 in FANCASH. Other sportsbooks, they don't hit right. Fanatics Sportsbook, winning just hits different here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup. This time on Wednesday night, Thanksgiving Eve, against the Charlotte Hornets, concluding what I've just been talking about, and apparently only I have been talking about, as the weirdest road trip that's ever existed that I've ever seen. The road trip that, let's just recap it one more time, that started when the Knicks played a Friday night in New York City, and then played in Miami, and then played in Dallas, and then played in Orlando, and then went to Brooklyn, and now they go to Charlotte before coming back to New York City on Friday. But I digress. The Knicks will get to play a Charlotte Hornet team that I know a lot of you are terrified of because we fear everybody against this Knicks defense. I know that first half against Brooklyn was mildly scary, that the Knicks could only muster a 2-point lead at halftime, but the Knicks eventually pulled away a game that definitely the doctor prescribed for any Knicks fan that was hoping just to see a comfortable second half win, as Mr. Macri put it. So the Charlotte Hornets, on the other hand, so here's the preview that I usually go through. Here's what I got on the Charlotte Hornets. They are 4-13. Their 4 wins this year are the Bucks without Giannis, the Jazz, who are 5-12, the Nets, who are 3-14, and the Wizards, who have lost 14 straight games. They sit at 17th in offensive rating. They're 24th in defense. They're 21st in net rating. Now, they do rebound the ball very well. They're 3rd in offensive rebound percentage. They're also 2nd in just rebound percentage in general. They're not a fast team, though, although that might change with LaMelo Ball now back in the lineup. I'm assuming he's going to play in this game. We'll ask my guest in just a second about his health status. But they're 22nd in pace on the season. Don't score a lot, 20th in points per game. They are 8th in 3-point attempts per game, but they're 20th in 3-point percentage, and they do turn the ball over a lot, 23rd in turnovers per game. And then there's their defense, which is a bit of Jekyll and Hyde. So opponent offensive rebounds per game, they're 2nd. The only team that's better than them is the Knicks. Opponent defensive rebounds per game, they're 5th. They're a top 5 rebounding team and top 2 when you just do rebounds in general. They allow the 2nd fewest rebounds per game, 2nd in opponent rebounds per game. And then 3-point attempts per game, they allow the 4th fewest. They're 4th in opponents' 3-point attempts per game. Now let's go to some other percentages some by their defense. They're 23rd in opponents' points per game, 27th in opponents' turnovers per game. They don't force a ton of turnovers. They're dead last in 3-point percentage against by their opponent, and then 28th in field goal percentage against. This is a team with some fun young players. Con Knippel having a great rookie campaign, shooting 43% from 3 on about 8 attempts on the season. They have Ryan Kalkbrenner having a great start to his NBA career. Sion James is a player to get excited about. Brandon Miller, I believe in year 3 now, is looking pretty good. And then, of course, there's the LaMelo Ball question, and Colin Sexton you're going to see in this game on Wednesday, and some veterans that you wonder what their future is in Charlotte. I think I've previewed this team enough. It is time to welcome first-time, long-time guest back to Knicks Film School from the BuzzBeat podcast, a good friend of the pod, Brian Geisinger. Brian, welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
Thanks for having me on and doing such a wonderful job setting the table there. I've got my cliff notes on New York here. I'm better prepared for Wednesday's game now.
Awesome. So I do need to start here because your good friend, I believe, still your co-host, Richie Randall, demanded a shout out. I'm just going to start here. It's probably the most important question. Do you follow baseball, Brian?
Vaguely, yes. Lightly, yes. When I was yes is the answer.
Okay.
I loved it. This postseason was phenomenal. I grew up an Atlanta fan, but that has sort of like diminished as I've aged, and I'm just sort of a general here to support all teams kind of guy now. Rob Lowe wearing the NFL hat. That's baseball.
I'll settle for that because Richie Randall being a gigantic Atlanta Braves fan, I being a New York Mets fan, that was always a clash that I always had to overcome anytime I linked up for a Hornets Knicks pregame pod, that I'd have to hear about Atlanta dominance over the New York Mets. And I don't have to hear about that on this podcast. So you already have a leg up on Richie Randall. Happy Thanksgiving, Rich. I hope you and the family are doing well. But one thing I am hoping for, speaking of dominance, is that the Knicks have a hint of a Atlanta Brave type dominance over the Hornets in this game on Wednesday. And look, the paranoia of Knicks fans, and again, the first half against Brooklyn, it was a 2-point game at halftime. So a lot of Knicks fans were like, man, we're going to have to sweat out a game against little brother. And then I look at this Hornets team, and like there's this bottom 5 in the NBA that all have net ratings of -10 or worse, and they're not there. They're in the bottom 10, so they are like one of the 10 worst teams of the NBA. But the numbers show that there are moments where it looks good, and it's not translating to wins, but there are moments where you can get excited. So I'll start here. What would you say to a Knicks fan that is worried about a Thanksgiving Eve loss to the Hornets at the end of a road trip? Basically, what does it look like when it's looked the best in Charlotte on the court?
Yeah, when it's looked the best, I mean, really the first probably week and a half of the season when LaMelo Ball was healthy and playing at a high level, then he goes down with the ankle injury, which is a chronic concern with him. And he's been back, not playing in back-to-backs, which is why he sat out Sunday at Atlanta. But he has not also like looked quite himself since right before the injury, and certainly like right after the injury, since he's returned to the lineup. He's not been the sort of like all-star caliber player that people were hoping for, expecting to see, especially after a good start. But when he is healthy on the court, even if he's sort of, not at 100%, he does command a fair amount of gravity with the basketball as a pull-up shooter. His creativity as a passer is a big deal. And he's really one of the most talented shot makers in the league. Like a very creative player, kind of a funky release, but hits it from a bunch of different levels. And the Hornets offense this season, they've changed it up. Like last season, year one under Charles Lee, they played a lot of 5-out. And they played a lot of 5-out that looks kind of similar to what you would see with like the Hawks or Will Hardy and the Jazz, where they would instead of having their center spaced in the middle of the court, they were moving the 5. Last year was a lot of Mark Williams, Nick Richards, Moussa Diabate. They were spacing them to the wing. And this year they have moved the 5. They're playing some 5-out, but not really that often. They're mostly keeping the 5 down in the dunker spot. And they are number 1 in the NBA in the amount of ball screens that have been set by guards this season. They're number 1 in the NBA, the amount of pick and roll possessions where a center has been in the dunker spot or a player is in the dunker spot. So they're not doing this sort of like 5-out that you might think. They're doing a lot of guard screens, even more than say like the Thunder. And when LaMelo is in the lineup and he's healthy, he's obviously a big deal in those. And you'll see they'll flatten it out. They'll put 3 players across the baseline. They'll have Con Knippel come up, set a screen either at the nail or at the top of the key for LaMelo, or Colin Sexton or Trey Mann, who's having a rough season this year for Charlotte. And then they'll play out of it. Like Con will slip the screen, he'll pop. They'll look to get it to him on the short roll. If 2 go with LaMelo, he'll pop out for a 3, and they'll just try to play out of that. And so they're not exactly splitting the atom, but between that and the offensive rebound numbers, like they're number 2 in the league in offensive rebound rate, which you referenced at the top of the pod. Like that's creating basically like a league average offense for them at the moment. And they're like juking the stats like just enough to do that. And if you're a Knicks fan, I would say the one thing you would probably be like most afraid or frustrated by or whatever is that like LaMelo is back, Brandon Miller is back. He played his first game Saturday. Then he sat out the back-to-back in Atlanta as well. but those guys are going to have, multiple days of rest, not having played since Saturday, coming into Wednesday's game. And those are Charlotte's, two of their top three players. Knippel has been their best player so far this season. He's been outstanding as a rookie. He's not all the way there as sort of like an on-ball creator, though they're giving him more and more of those reps. But his movement shooting, his screen setting, his connective passing has all been really, really good. So if the Hornets are going to, I was going to say make a push, like a push to what? I have no idea. But if they were to ascend to a higher gear, the concepts of that are that you've got LaMelo, Brendan Miller, Khan working together in these sort of like guard wing screening actions. And then you're continuing to let guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, the rookie center out of Creighton, Moussa Diabate, control the glass. And like, that's sort of like the formula for them. And then maybe you get like a Miles Bridges gets you a crazy scoring game where he doesn't make 15 bad decisions in, you get just the usual 8 with him. So that's sort of the recipe. And yeah, I mean, like if you're on the Hornets schedule a week ago, you're not having to see LaMelo or Brandon Miller, but because you're getting them now, you're getting those two guys likely in the rotation.
They need to come up with a stat for that, like an injury bad luck, but it like for the opponent, where it's like, oh, we're the team that everybody comes back against. It's happened twice already, and it usually happens when teams go to New York, so it'll be rare to see it happen when the Knicks are on the road. But usually, what happens is when teams have that
MSG,
also that Knicks Brooklyn road trip. It's like we sat out the Brooklyn game because we're injured, but we're prime, like Giannis is scheduled to he's near return. Guess who the Knicks play on Friday at MSG? Giannis Antetokounmpo.
He likes playing New York too, if I'm remembering my my NBA lore correctly. If it's any consolation, I think the Spectrum Center Wednesday night might be MSG South.
Well, you're hinting at a joke that I've been making to every opponent, basically, that Miami is MSG South Beach, that Orlando is MSG Disney. I have no idea what MSG...
there should be some banking pun that we'll work on it, but it's there for sure.
Yeah, MSG, and that's Charlotte, so it's nowhere near Raleigh or Durham or anything like that.
3 hours away, 2.5 hour drive south of where I live in Raleigh. So. Yeah,
I want it noted. I know the geography of North Carolina.
It's important,
I knew that. I knew they're nowhere near Winston-Salem either. Yep. Okay, they're nowhere near Myrtle Beach, because that's technically South Carolina, that nobody in New York seems to know. I went to school in Virginia, so I know these things. Anyway, I will say that hearing about the X's and O's and how the Hornets like to play, if the Knicks had an OG Anunoby to break up all these ball screens that they're running, I'd be a little happier. If the Knicks had... So Mitchell Robinson missed the last game with an illness and looked horrible against the Orlando Magic. Now, they made him guard in space. I don't think maybe it's Miles Bridges. Maybe it's like LaMelo in some screens. And then the Knicks decided to switch. But they had him on Franz a lot during the game and he just cooked them the entire time. I don't know that the Hornets can provide that type of problem, but I do think the Knicks have the counter to the offensive rebounding strength. That seems to be how the Hornets have been successful so far this year. My question, it doesn't show up in the stats that this is a dominant, they've nobody averaging more than 8 rebounds, not more than 9 rebounds a game so far. So is their offensive rebounding rate just Moussa Diabate and Kalkbrenner having good games on the offensive glass?
For the most part, I mean, some of the guard, when LaMelo's in, he's a pretty active rebounder from the guard spot, and Knippel has a nose for the basketball or whatever. But no, for Charlotte, I mean, they basically have just taken that center position, and when those two guys are healthy, Diabate and Kalkbrenner, and Kalkbrenner's the starter, Diabate is the energy guy off the bench. They basically split that, almost 50-50 or 55-45. And Plumlee was brought in, I thought, to maybe be an innings eater, but Kalkbrenner has just been too good to not play. And so for a team like the Hornets outside of Boston, I don't think there's a team in the NBA that's investing less money and resources in its center position. You've got a second round pick, You've got a guy in Plumlee who's probably on the vet. I think he's on the vet minimum. And then Diabate is the guy they signed to a two-way last season that they converted to a team-friendly, full-time contract. And they're getting like really good production out of Kalkbrenner and Diabate. Plumlee is luggage at this point, but like those other two guys are like legitimately giving them like just very like maybe sort of more like in more of like a modern sense, but like traditional center values. You know what I mean? Like boxing out, rebounds, get on the glass, pick and roll, screen dive. Kalkbrenner's primarily a drop coverage guy. He was for 5 seasons in Creighton, where they were sort of like the premier drop coverage defense in college hoops. Diabate, a little bit more versatility, a little bit more switchy. I'm sure you'll see him out on an island at times against some of the New York's, wings and guard creators, but he can play. He can be back in the drop too. He can do that as well. And those guys are just super active, going after putbacks. Kalkbrenner, like legit 7-1. And so even though he's not super, like he's not the strongest and he's not like an amazingly like light off his feet, quick leaper, just that raw size is like in his timing and his positioning is all quite good. And again, the Hornets, he's in the dunker spot, like he's plastered down there. So, and I mean, he's going to set the 5 set a fair amount of ball screens too. So like you're going to see those guys in the action, and Mitch is going to have to, if he's playing, is going to be, needed to potentially handle LaMelo, and we'll see how that goes at times. But LaMelo is a guy that you probably can switch out on. Like he's not, because he doesn't have the strength component that someone like Franz does. He can't really just like get you on your back heels and just sort of like charge into you with his shoulders. He's got to really rely on the step backs, and he's in a really bad streak shooting the ball right now too. It just has around the injury, obviously, but that's not gone great. The thing that I'm sure Charlotte will try to pick at is, and New York deals with this probably 82 games out of the year whenever Jalen Brunson is healthy, but because the Hornets are also like the highest volume guard screening team in the league, I'm sure whomever Jalen Brunson guards, that person is going to be asked to screen a lot. And it's going to be a moving target. They might try to stash him on Pat Connaughton or Drew Peterson. Like Charlotte's depth is pretty shaky at the moment too, because they also don't have Grant Williams. He's hurt. They don't have Josh Green. So without Grant Williams, they also don't have like a small ball 5. So that's another reason why they really just divvy the pie up between Kalkbrenner and Diabate, because there's no small ball contingent with this. They don't play Bridges or Salon or whatever at the 5. Like they just don't do that. So, but whomever is Brunson's guarding, and the Knicks will be ready for it. I mean, they see this stuff all the time, but I'm sure Charlotte is going to push that button as much as they possibly can when they play New York.
What it sounds like to me, even though, like, obviously I have the highest confidence in Jalen Brunson to still be able to get his points, and even if he's being picked on defense, he'll draw a charge or two. And the Knicks have usually been good about, I don't think they've had a game this year where he's been picked on to the point where it's been like they've hit him somewhat well with the defenders that they've put around him. It sounds like it's a Deuce McBride game that's going to be important. Mikal Bridges, you could take advantage of pre-switching as well. And if you have a healthy Mitch, at least if you're getting by Jalen Brunson, you're actually facing a rim protector. Where I'm going with this is that this feels like a Karl-Anthony Towns game, though. And the fact that he could potentially dominate, neutralizing Charlotte's dominance so far this season or performance this season on the glass, as well as I don't really see anybody that can guard him on the Hornets at the moment.
Towns has been a really interesting since Charles Lee got to Charlotte. So going back to like the preseason last year, because these two teams have met up in the preseason each of the last 2 years. Towns has been a really interesting matchup piece. A lot of like opposing stretch 5s are for Charlotte, especially if there's like a shakier shooter on the court somewhere. So like one of the ways Charlotte has defended New York a lot the last couple of seasons is they've cross matched at the 4 and 5, and they've put Bridges on Cat, and then they've stuck their center on Josh Hart.
Yeah, that's to be fair. Like the whole league does that now.
Yeah,
like,
right. Then
now Josh this year has made them pay. and he's like shooting 41% from three to start the year. There's a good article from James Edwards of The Athletic that the Knicks apparently hired a shooting coach that at Josh Hart's request. I also just personally think the fact that he's only playing 25 minutes now allows him to not be so gassed and can maybe focus on some shooting, improved shooting as well. But it's neither here nor there. So the four or the wing or the big wing guarding Cat and then putting your center on Josh Hart is not a new thing. I think they're combating it a lot better this season, where it's not just, especially in crunch time, all Josh Hart setting screens, which for Jalen Brunson, and then if they bring the double, hitting him on the short roll or switching the center onto Brunson, you're actually giving Cat a post touch if you need to, and seeing if he can take advantage of it.
It is going to create for some compelling matchups, though. Like, sort of talking about these two things really does. They feel like the two most sort of like obvious battlegrounds for this game. And, but like the other thing I would say is like Charles Lee, at least in year one, he did a lot of that cross matching, like a lot of it. And sort of, like he had this sort of Boston Celtics schooling back when he was an assistant there for a couple of years. And it seemed like he was going to really lean into having the five be the rover. Anytime you would go against an opponent that's like a sub 35% 3-point shooter, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And it felt like they probably leaned into it too much last season. Like that should be more of like, you do it with the right matchup, or it's a curveball after a time, like not like, oh, this is the base defense for, 40% of the games or whatever. But what I would say to that is they did, again, in the Atlanta game, Kalkbrenner did not play. And without him as sort of like their best drop center option, and I don't know what they would have done if he was healthy, but they went back to this coverage against Atlanta by putting Mason Plumlee to start the game on Dyson Daniels. And it was a train wreck to start the game. And like eventually they settled in. And I mean, Daniels made some plays and made him pay with the space and stuff like that. But they the first 3-4 minutes of the game, they weren't matching up correctly in transition. They weren't finding their guys. They were scrambled. Atlanta got like 2 or 3 buckets that were just like joke. But he just like told, like you and I could have like punted the ball up the court and, maybe gotten free for a layup. Like it was bad. So I am curious my guess is that they will try to cross match it when they can, in that, especially if Kalkbrenner is diminished at all, or if he's not playing, then Diabate becomes like a super important player for them. And you can do a lot. He's a great defender. He's super active, small for a center, but he just becomes like such an integral piece for them. And I'd be really curious to see what the coverages look like for him and what the matchups are for him, because that's going to dictate everything for New York's offense.
Last question about the on-court stuff for this game. Explain to me the fact that they're 4th in 3-point attempts allowed, but 30th in 3-point percentage against.
It's probably a fair amount of luck. I mean, I think there's something to be said with like, I'm sure a team like, I think the secret sauce when there are teams where you see that type of like delta, between like what you would expect what the expected 3-point percentage might be with that type of like diet, that type of shot diet. I think some of it is luck, maybe most of it, or the vast majority of it is luck. The secret sauce sometimes with that stuff is like contests. Like, are you a team that is like routinely applying like a good contest, like a plus contest? I don't think that's Charlotte necessarily. Like this is not like the greatest perimeter defensive team out there. But my guess would be that that's mostly comes down to 17 games worth of data and a little bit of a rare moment of fortune for the Hornets on the defensive side of the court.
Again, I want to be clear. That's why I wanted to ask you, like, do they have a good 3-point defense and they're just teams, the ball's going in at the moment?
No, I mean, the one of the rookies, Sion James, who I covered at Duke last season, and he's had a nice, like, I think offensively he's been up and down, and defensively, like, he's not like, I don't think they drafted like the next Lou Dort, by getting this guy, but he's a super physical, strong, imposing defender at times. And with Josh Green out, he has given them someone who can guard the ball. And I've been covering the Hornets, I think, for over 10 years now. And like, I could count on one hand the number of times they've had like a like really like forceful point of attack defender. And it's even fewer the number of times they've had a guy who could credibly do that and also like be somewhat of a threat offensively. Like Michael Carter-Williams was a great on-ball defender for them 8 years ago, not much of an offensive force. So I think James has given them some of that. And Miller coming back gives them more length. He's a decent defender along the perimeter too. But for the most part, I don't think like this is not like a great defensive perimeter team. They're small. They play a lot of 2-guard lineups where it's Colin Sexton and Trey Mann or LaMelo and Trey Mann. Knipple is like a solid, he's probably a minus defender at the moment because most rookies are. And he's, 6'5" with a 6'7" wingspan or whatever. But he can get beat on back cuts. He occasionally ball watches, but for the most part, he's like in the right spots. And he's pretty strong and physical too. So you can sort of like skate by him along the perimeter, but he's sort of like harder to like just back down and mash and get into the post. So they've got some tools, but for the most part, I think it's a fair amount of like smoke and mirrors. And you're just hoping Kalkbrenner in the drop, fight over screens. Cause they're also not like this is not like, they're not playing zone on like, 28% of they rarely play zone defense. This is a man team. They occasionally do some of these junk matchups with the cross matches, but for the most part, that's like kind of about it, Yeah. And Diabate again is sort of like his length, versatility. I think that is also like a useful tool for them on that side, but it's not much. No, they don't have great defensive personnel on this roster.
Well, styles make fights, and you have a team that has allowed some of the fewest 3-point attempts per game in the Hornets against the Knicks, who have taken the fourth most. So we'll see which wins out in this game on Wednesday. You being the college aficionado, we'll call you an expert. I think that's a fair assessment after the first 25 minutes of the pod. Did you see Con Knipple coming in and being this good right away?
I was pretty bullish on him heading into his freshman season at Duke. A lot of the chatter last summer was that in their preseason scrimmages and stuff, he was kind of kicking ass. And he's just continued to, I thought he was awesome last season at Duke. I was all in on him, as a lottery pick. And he was fourth on my board heading into the draft. And I came down to, if Edgecombe somehow falls to 4, you take Edgecombe. If he's not there, you take Con. I wanted him over Bailey and Trey Johnson, 2 prospects whom I like a fair amount too. What I would say is Con is doing the things that I imagined that he would do well. And I'm not surprised that he's like doing them well his rookie season. But it is worth noting that by like the 3rd or 4th week of his career, when LaMelo was out, Brandon Miller was out, it was like, oh crap, he's the best offensive player. Like, yeah. I think I know the Hornets stink. They've won 4 games this season, but for a rookie to, I think, and it sort of depends on which metrics you're going to look at. But if you're just watching the team on a night to night basis and Con's shooting and scoring and playmaking numbers and rebounding numbers are quite good, like he's been their best player. He's been their most reliable player. And so that to me is like, he's doing what I expected, but earlier and against like more defensive attention than I would have sort of imagined it. But he's the shooting, the shot making, the playmaking, the connected passing, the high field, the competitiveness, all of that was on display covering him up close last season, watching his tape at Duke.
Yeah, I think we've already got a fun 3-man race for Rookie of the Year in the NBA. I would, crazy enough, probably put Cooper 3, and then it's
Queen.
Pick your Derek Queen. I actually think I would go Edgecombe and Con at 1, 2, and then Derek Queen. I can't get a read on how to evaluate the Pelicans. I just can't. I will deal with it when I eventually have the Knicks eventually play the Pelicans, and I have to look deeper into their numbers. But yeah, it just looks like a home run pick at 4 to take him with, especially with like the direction the NBA is going. He is perfect for The taking 9 threes a game and hitting at such a high volume,
44%, basically 12 attempts per 100 possessions. And if he was, one, how it goes when either you cover a team, you're a fan of a team, whatever. And if there's a rookie class that's then this 2025 rookie class looks pretty good, I would say, if not to really good. And if you have one of the guys that stinks in the class, like the 2021 draft, you talked about Franz a few minutes ago. The 2021 draft class was a phenomenal one. Cade, Mobley, Franz, in the Hornets draft James Bouknight in the lottery.
Yeah.
He was basically out of the league. They trade with the Knicks draft night trade to get back into the first round. They take Kai Jones and then they take JT Thor. Basically, all those guys are either like out of the league or in the G League now. And that always stings when there's like a historical draft like that and you just trip over your own laces. So to have a guy who's playing this well, who's probably been the best rookie through the first quarter of the season is, it's a relief. And just given how little LaMelo and Brandon Miller have played so far this season, it's hard to think about how, I think the vibes would be pretty toxic if not for Khan and some of the other rookies too, who have also played well, but Khan especially has really driven the bus.
If I could ask about said vibes around the fan base in particular, because look, if you told me that I get to watch like Con Knippel and Kalkbrenner and Sion James and potentially like what Brandon Miller, if he's healthy, and seeing White, like that's a young core to at least, even if the results at the end of the day aren't going to be wins, you at least get to watch lessons and progress and development. And it gives you some hope for the future while also praying for some lottery luck in the Debanza Peterson Boozer sweepstakes. And then there's the LaMelo thing. I don't even know if it's a good or a bad thing. And I have no idea how Hornets fans even feel about LaMelo these days. Like, how are the vibes in Charlotte watching this team?
They're not great. I would say they're pretty bad. I mean, I think it's split among a few different factions, but there's one which is sort of like the diseased brain online too much group that just like every game is like you have to, it's like it's like existential, you know what I mean? And they're either
living and dying with every game. Yeah, we do that in New York too, don't worry.
They're either ready to like trade LaMelo tomorrow, or there are people that like think that the franchise should like apologize to him for letting him down. Like there's just like a real mixed bag of that sort of like contingent. I think there's a large group of people that they just want to see a competitive team, and they're bummed that it's November 20 whatever and the team stinks. And it's like, and there's just no hope once again. I think there are also people like me, and we are like the dead enders. And hello to all my brothers and sisters down here at the bottom of the pit. But like, what I would like to see is them to build something sustainable, and to not like, when I first started covering the team every year, and all Richie Randall, we've been doing this podcast together for 9 years now. The Hornets have never made the playoffs during that run. The first half of that, they were just like gunning with just throwing Kemba Walker's body into the meat grinder so they could try to like gun for the 8th spot. And it never worked. It never worked. It failed horribly all the time because their margins were so small. And once they traded Kemba, they then lucked into LaMelo with him falling, then moving up in the lottery, he falls to them. But as soon as they got LaMelo, they tried to a week later after that draft, they signed Gordon Hayward. And they just like immediately, there was just never patience for like a multi-year build underneath the Michael Jordan ownership contingent. I do think it's a new day. There's a new ownership group. There's a new front office. I believe the current GM is probably half the age of the previous president of basketball operations. So there's just like a youthful feel. And that is good, but there is a lot of sour too, because you could honestly go back to the summer of 2022, which is really when like in 2022, LaMelo's coming off his first all-star season. He hasn't really dealt with any of the ankle injuries yet. He's got the wrist issue, but that's about it. they're going to go into the 2022 draft with 2 top 15 picks. And they were going to re-sign Miles Bridges that summer. Bridges arrested. They end up trading one of those picks in 2022 in the draft. They trade the 13th pick that turned into Jalen Duren. Whoops. Oops, daisy. And then they draft Mark Williams at the 15th pick. Nice player, but didn't really like turn out the way that you would expect it to be.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
The team that you traded the 13th pick to also traded. It was to the Knicks, and then they traded that pick to the Pistons. Or they drafted Jalen Duren, traded it to the Pistons, so they could clear cap space. They traded like Nerlens Noel and Kemba Walker and Alec Burks, so they could sign Jalen Brunson. But
fair enough.
We're all looking like we share that. Oh wow, look at what Jalen Duren's become.
I mean, this is I won't go into the expanded universe of this because it's really not like germane, but just like the night of that draft, like I was praying that Duren would fall to them at 13. I didn't think he would fall out of the top like 7 or 8. And then, I mean, he literally put the Hornets hat on that night. It was like on stage in Hornets gear. And there's this like 5-minute period where it was like, oh my God, they drafted Duren and they've got this, who are they going to take with the 15th? They could get blah, blah, blah. They could get AJ Griffin, you're just like all these names you're just like rifling through. And then they end up, we weren't sure sort of like what the deal was going on. We were like, are they going to get more picks? What are they doing? Why are they moving off Duren? Are they trying to move the 15th pick and keep Jalen Duren? Like what's happening? And ultimately what they were doing, and this was really some of the most pathetic bit of team building I've ever seen, cowardly stuff from the previous ownership group of the Hornets. But basically the Hornets never paid the tax underneath Michael Jordan.
Right.
And if they were going to sign Miles Bridges to a max contract that summer and stay under the tax at the start of the season, not the end, go into the season under the tax, they needed to trade the 13th pick because of the like rookie salary financial like slot that was going to be assigned to that. If they had that, they weren't going to be able to sign Bridges and go into the season under the tax. And so they moved the pick back. And the first round pick that they got in return was Denver's, which turned into Nick Smith Jr., who's now on a 2-way deal with the Lakers. Like it was pathetic. It was truly cowardly, short-sighted, cheap, like whatever you want to say. It was a disaster. So I think really since then, like LaMelo's been hurt. Bridges' career has just gone totally haywire. I think most people don't want that guy. I don't want him around anymore. Miller was a revelation, but now he's been mostly hurt the last 2 seasons. So vibes are not good. Everyone's happiness is going into the Con Knipple bucket at the moment. And I just think ultimately, like, they're in the middle of a multi-year rebuild. And at some point, maybe during this season, maybe this off season, the LaMelo question will continue to pop up, because if they move off of him, that's going to obviously push the timeline out further, but you also might get more resources in-house to help you hopefully build something more sustainable, which is why, like I said, I'm in that bucket that just wants them to do the things that could lead to them being a small market success story. And they're a ways off from doing that. It would pain me to see them trade LaMelo because I've really enjoyed watching him play and covering him, but they're in a tough spot and they're gonna have to make some hard decisions sooner rather than later.
Do Charlotte, like, does the majority of Hornet fans share your sentiment that it would pain you to trade LaMelo Ball?
I do think so, actually. I mean, I think there's a lot of Hornets fans that I think there's a smaller percentage that straight up just don't like him for all of the...
Because he's 6'7"? Or?
He's 6'7", or because he's, his dad from 8 years ago, or the injury, like whatever it is, they're just like fatigued of it. I think there's another portion of people that really like LaMelo, like wanted it to work out and are bummed that it didn't, and are sort of like ready to just move on just because it feels like everyone's at the end of the road, and that ultimately you're just going to have to do a larger reset. They've tried to reset it around him, really starting in 2023. but maybe you need to fully turn the page off of this like previous era and move Bridges, move LaMelo, and then try to build it around Khan, Brandon Miller, Kalkbrenner, Sion James. They've got picks coming in, a first round pick coming in from Miami in 27, most likely. Dallas and then Miami in 27 and 28, first round picks with some protections on them. So like there's stuff coming in. But they're going to have to, I think ultimately to answer your question, to get back to it, I think most people would be bummed to see LaMelo trade because like he was such a breath of fresh air when he got here because the previous summer, they had to move Kemba, who was beloved in Charlotte, and everyone knew they were going to have to do it. They waited way too long to do it. They probably should have done it 18 months sooner than they did it in the summer of 2019. And so you're just in the desert again. You're like, when are they going to get a star? How are they going to get a star? They have to draft a star. Well, what are they going to do? And then they luck up. They get to third. They luck up because Golden State doesn't draft James. Golden State takes James Wiseman and doesn't actually do the 2 timeline thing, which would have been drafting LaMelo. And they were so fun the next 2 seasons. And so I think a lot that got people back into the team. It got hope back up, and it made the covering and watching the team fun again. So I think he earned a lot of, like, deservingly so, earned a lot of credibility those first 2 seasons. And I think people are just bummed, myself included, that he's been so riddled with injuries and that it's gotten to this point. So I'm at the point now where I wouldn't be, I'm anticipating it, whether it's going to happen or not. It just feels inevitable. And that's probably not fair to LaMelo or the team, but that's just the vibe at the moment, at least from the outside looking in.
Well, look, I look at a team like Detroit that we're 22 months removed from them starting their season 3-33, I believe, was the beginning of the Monty Williams season. And now they have the best record in the Eastern Conference and are on this crazy winning streak. I look at, the Knicks can be a bit of a success story in this, how they were lost in a multi-year rebuild. And then it just took a little bit of structure and, some tough decisions, and look where they get to. I've no ill will against Charlotte. My only ever conflict with the Hornets or even LaMelo is that people called him Melo, and I'm a Carmelo Anthony guy. Yeah, so like
it's confusing.
Well, it's just like that's who Melo is. He's LaMelo. Just personally, it's that's my pet peeve. But I empathize, and I hope they. Maybe some lottery luck is all it'll take, because you put a Darren Peterson with Con Knippel and Brandon Miller and Sion James and Ryan Kalkbrenner. That's a squad that maybe it doesn't win right away, but it's at least that's a direction.
They've been so close. I mean, to get the number 2 pick in the Victor Wembanyama draft, even though Miller's a nice player for sure when healthy, but there were all these like off ramps, and they've just, whether through their own decision making or through bad luck with injuries or the ping pong balls of the lottery, they've just floored right past all of the off ramps as they just plunge further on the highway here. So we'll see. This is a big draft coming up, and again, I know it may be a small consolation, but for the Hornets to be in a position where they have good odds to get back into the top 3 or 4, that's encouraging. That's exciting, because this does look like a 3 or 4 person draft at a minimum right now.
You mentioned the Wemby draft, that they were number 2, and you were 1 away from getting Wemby. Is there any sentiment in the Hornets fan base of what the Thompson twins have looked like so far, specifically of men, that it's less about we could have had Wemby, but we missed out on lottery luck, and it's more we could have had a men?
Honestly, it's weird in part too, because Amen and LaMelo, like with healthy, would have been an unbelievable combination. Those 2 guys are like a really nice fit, honestly, in a lot of different ways. To answer your question, no, it's kind of, but one, I don't think anyone thought like Wembanyama going to San Antonio felt like preordained. You know what I mean? And everyone here who follows the Hornets is such like a beat dog that like, no, you're just assuming misery is around the corner. So like, I think a lot of people, myself included, wanted Scoot Henderson. And that's, Miller just turned out to be a better pick than him. But actually, my draft rankings that year were Wembanyama, Scoot, Amen Thompson, 3rd, Brandon Miller, 4 in like the next tier with like Asar Thompson. That was those were the top 5 guys I had that year. So I like Thompson more than Miller. And I think at this point now, people are like, honestly, maybe they're like weirdly relieved that Scoot has not turned out to be like, Russell Westbrook part 2 or whatever.
Right.
But I think that along with Miller being pretty good has caused, I think people looked at it like it was a 3-person thing, excluding Amen Thompson. I think that has carried over. It's an interesting question. Like it doesn't really get, at least not in my circles, it's not discussed like that, even though like it absolutely should be, especially if you see what Thompson is turning into at age 21. He's much younger than Miller, even though they were in the same, draft class.
Right. Well, the Knicks didn't have a pick that year. They were in the middle of, I think that was because they traded it for Josh Hart that year. They traded a lottery protected pick, and then obviously they made the playoffs instead and Cam Reddish for Josh Hart. And it's been, as the Knicks have started to build a bit of a contender of their own over the past several seasons. 2 questions before I let you go. Your thoughts on the Knicks and their title chances and what they've been able to build.
Yeah, I mean, like most people who follow the league, coming into the season was very high on them. And despite some of the weirdness of the roster, just sort of like,
what do you mean?
What it means to build a team where Cat is like one of your top guys, and just like the challenges that come with having I guess we'll call him a 5 for the purposes of this, especially when he was first brought in, where you're thinking, well, how are they gonna protect the rim? What's gonna be the pick and roll coverage? What does this mean for Brunson? Blah blah blah. Obviously, Cat is an amazing player and like is phenomenal offensive talent. Building an offense around him is easy. Like the guy having a stretch 5 like that who can beat up mismatches and pass is like, what else could you want? It's just the defensive side of the court is where things get a bit tricky. I love Anunoby. I'm a big Jalen Brunson fan. So they've just got and Josh Hart is cool and rocks. So I really like a lot of the guys in their rotation. Deuce McBride is someone I remember liking his freshman year at West Virginia. So it's cool that he's turned into like a guy in the NBA, and to do it in New York just adds another level to it. It's pretty sweet. I think they're going to be, I know the start maybe has been like not amazing this season. I think Toronto is going to regress once the schedule beefs up a little bit. They're good, but I just don't think they're the second best team in the East. Maybe Detroit comes back down to earth at some point. At the risk of oversimplifying it, I certainly see this is like the Knicks as a team that should get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then it's just like, once you put them into a 7-game series, how do you feel about them against Cleveland or Detroit? Yeah. It's like, I like some of those matchups. I like some of the matchups less. I'm excited to see them because I actually haven't watched like a full New York game since the preseason against the Hornets. So I'm excited to give them cut up the film Wednesday night after the game. And I'm hopeful that they're going to make a big playoff push, because even from afar, but as someone that loves New York and loves going to visit there, like the Knicks and their like the sort of like place that they hold as like an institution in that city is super cool. And so I want them to I'd like for them to make a push and make a run. Obviously, whatever team comes out of the West, I think that team is gonna win the title. Denver or most likely Oklahoma City. But I think coming into I'm not moving off of where I had New York coming into the season just yet, especially since I haven't seen them that much. So I think they're 1A, 1B in the East, and or maybe 1C if this is like legit with Detroit. And so I give them a decent chance of making it to the finals.
Where did you have them before the season?
I think I had them probably.
Did you have them in the finals or just losing in the conference finals?
I think I had them. I'm not sure if I made like an official prediction. So
okay.
if these were things that were like in my head, it probably changed a lot. I mean, I would have just been like, yeah, it's them or Cleveland. You know what I mean? So like at worst, I would have been like 50-50 kind of, you know?
Yeah.
So depending on what day you would have talked to me, I probably would have had them in the finals.
In fairness, the NBA also just had them or Cleveland with their primetime scheduling. How Christmas Day is all these great Western Conference rivalry matchups and the Knicks Cavs at noon.
Yep.
Like it's how the NBA thought the season would go. Look, I co-sign. I obviously also hope the Knicks make a run this year. I look at the Detroit thing's so fascinating. They have to go 35-30 the rest of the year. So barely above 500 the rest of the season to get 50 wins. So if you're just looking at a team that may have 40 wins left in them, that's a 55 win team. So any regression could still mean a pretty good shot at a 1 or a 2 seed. So they've definitely put themselves in an interesting position now. Last question before I let you go. And I think it's a fascinating question to ask you because of you mentioning that this is a franchise, the Hornets, that hasn't made the playoffs in the time that you've been covering them and with the Busby pod. That was always something that stood out with me, by the way, when Richie brought that up to me. And that was years ago when Richie brought that up. You guys have never covered a playoff game.
Never, not once. Two play-in games that they lost by a combined like 89 points. But yeah.
So when I would hear Knicks fans complaining about like Tibbs problems, which is like, our ceiling's not that high. And it's like, you got to understand where the floor could be, people. Like it could be so much worse. So it, not to fully be disrespectful, but I always use the Hornets as a, like, I for you guys, I hope it turns around, but it's always been a reference point for like, it could be worse, especially if Michael Jordan was my owner. But the phenomenon of that game, that one playoff loss that you point to, that you don't even have to add context and every fan knows exactly what game you're talking about. Do you have that game as a Hornets fan? Yeah.
And I'll spare you the sermon after it because I went long on it during the middle of some other rambling a few minutes.
No. This was great stuff. Ball. We like people that know ball. You're good.
I think the 20, at least for me and sort of like my contingent, there's a lot of stuff you could point to. I mean, that they passed over Donovan Mitchell in 2017, the Gordon Hayward edition in 2020, the 2021 draft, which was a debacle. But to me, it really is, it's the 2022 draft. And like, for
so it's that game is that draft.
What's like what's the meaningful? I mean, okay, if there was maybe game 6 against Miami in the 2016 playoffs, that's like maybe the one other game.
The fanny pack guy.
Like, fanny pack guy, hounding Dwayne Wade. Then Wade makes a bunch of crazy shots. And so that's probably the game. But dude, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just I didn't know. I just did a couple of Magic podcasts, and they brought up Nick Anderson. So I didn't know how far back it would go. But go ahead, tell me about that. So we talked about the 2022 draft.
Yeah, we talked about. I would say the 2022 draft. I guess I was sort of looking for just as opposed to like specific game. I was thinking like a sort of like an outcome of some kind that sort of like spirals the franchise. And so like I said, the 2022 draft, which again, they go into that with the 13th and the 15th picks, and they come away with that night of the draft, just Mark Williams in the first round. And
no Jalen Duren. No Jalen Duren. Afterwards, by the way, just to give people context, Tari Eason at 17, Jake LaRavia at 19.
Kessler, Brown. I mean,
Christian Brown at 21. Yeah.
So, and I mean, like, again, it does thin out. It's like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of like, I like Malachi Branham heading into that draft. He hasn't, turned into much. I like Marjon Beauchamp. He never really, I like Blake Wesley. I guess he's had like some good minutes with Portland recently or whatever, but for the most part, like, but the fact that they could have gotten a guy like Eason, who's like absolutely like a starter quality player, with some upside, or LaRavia, who's really turned into a good player and is, blossomed into a nice piece with a good Lakers team. So if I had to, again, the game, I would say 2016 playoffs against Miami, but it's also tough too, because like they haven't won a playoff series since 2002. And the only other times, like between when the franchise comes back to Charlotte and they've made the playoffs, like it's 2010, which they get swept in the first round. It's 2014, swept in the first round. And then it's 2016, they lose in 7 games in the first round. Like that's it. So it's like there's not a ton to go on. So that would be mine. And then I would just say that if I had to pick a single outcome, draft games, free agency, whatever, it's the 2022 draft is one that just like set them on a really weird course here. And now has I mean, they've got it's big that they have a new ownership group now. It was just never going to work with MJ. And so for them to have a new cast of characters that really does understand sort of like the patient, multi-tiered process that comes along with cultivating and developing a team in a smaller market. It's like, it's such a small thing, but if you have an ownership group in a small market that doesn't get that, you're cooked. This is why the Kings, like, it's the same thing. It's like you have an irrational owner, an irrational, impatient owner that wants to just like buck convention. You can get lucky, but even then your luck is probably going to run out after, the Beam team feels like it was like 100 years ago now.
Literally their head coach is now the Knicks head coach.
I know, it's crazy. So like, I mean, stuff changes quickly in the NBA for sure, but the fact that there's like a new crew, like, driving things is it may not work out. Like they may be as rotten as they were, but at least like the options are on the table for them to be better and to cultivate a young roster that can like mature and develop and maybe one day land a star. Because as good as Con Knipple is, and I think he's like potentially a star, like if you're really looking for like one of those like tier 1 guys, like the draft is the only way Charlotte can do it. So they're gonna have to try to get lucky and then do a good job, making the right pick. So
So that game is that draft. I remember the 2016 regular season, specifically that playoffs. That was the year that you had 4 teams finish with the same record.
Yeah, Charlotte finished tied for the third best record, but got the
Miami.
Yep,
because of tiebreaker. So it was Miami, Atlanta, Boston, and Charlotte all finished 48 and 34. And because of tiebreakers, Charlotte got the 6, Miami got the 3, and then Atlanta and the Celtics played each other. That's how far back you got to go for that game. At least I do remember that game 6 too. Dwayne Wade hadn't hit a 3 since like the calendar year had turned, and he hit 3 in the final couple minutes of that game.
I'm pretty sure that Nick Batum is the only player from that team that's still like active in the NBA. I'm like 95.
Looking at that roster now, Tyler Hansborough was on that team.
No, he's literally a professor and a broadcaster at UNC right now.
Yep. Kemba Walker, Cody Zeller. Like you said, Nick Batum. Well, something we have in common. Jeremy Lin on that roster as a shooting guard.
He was awesome for them that season too.
Yeah,
that was. I don't know if that was his like statistically his best year, but in terms of like driving winning, he was a great bench guard. And then they would play he and Kemba together sometimes, and they had these 2 guys that could get after you in the pick and roll. And that was Kemba's like breakout season too. So Lin was awesome. I think in my opinion, he's like a hero in this state. He was only here for 1 season. They could not afford to bring him back afterwards, but he was, they had to sign Batum and Marvin Williams that off season, and they didn't have enough left over to take care of Lin. So off he went. But his 1 season here, he was a stud for the Hornets.
Finished 7th in 6th man of the year that season. And I know you called him like a hero in Charlotte, and that might have been his best season. I think statistically him finishing 7th for 6th man. They made a documentary about his season in New York. So I would slightly put that ahead of his one season in Charlotte.
It's fair. You look fair. This is also the difference between being the media capital of the world.
Right.
We the second biggest city in the southeast outside of Florida.
We get to turn a good 17 days into an international sensation. Brian, this was outstanding. Thank you so much for coming on and giving me an extended edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Pod. Good stuff. Like I said, my audience loves when people know the sport, and you clearly do. And so I appreciate you giving us your insight. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they could find you and all your work.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on a few times over the year, along with Richie. If you want to know more about the Hornets, the BuzzBeat podcast, you can find us on all of your podcasting apps. We have a Substack page at BuzzBeat Plus, and we've got a lot of different content. You'd be a subscriber to get into this stuff, but we've got other podcasts. We've got For Pay podcasts. We've got like a text, chat community on there of about 500 people talking about the Hornets on a daily basis, which is always pretty fun. And, so I would say listen in, follow us along there, follow us on Twitter. And if there are any people who like college basketball, cover into the draft. I do a lot of college hoops coverage, freelance for Swish Theory, where I cover the draft for Basket Under Review, which is a new project that launched under the Trilly Donovan umbrella for this season. So I'm contributing there, and I also contribute at 247 Sports too, mostly covering the ACC. So a lot of Duke coverage, UNC, State, and the rest of the league. So you can follow me online on Twitter at bguys_bird, and the BuzzBeat podcast. Listen in.
There you go. To those who up here in the Big Apple who have no idea what he meant by state, that's NC State.
Yeah, that's right.
He was referring to. Again, I know the lingo. I just wanted to be the translator.
Hey, there's 3 draftable guys on NC State this season, so NBA fans are gonna have to, maybe not 2026 draft guys, but like in the next couple of years, 3 guys who are draftable. So tune into the Wolf Pack when you get a chance this year.
There you go. Thank you, Brian, for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. Like this video. Remember to subscribe. I'll be back on Friday, yes, with a preview of the Knicks matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks, as I expect Giannis Antetokounmpo to be playing in this game. Happy Thanksgiving, Knicks fans. Thank you so much for all your support, both this season and over the years. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go Knicks, and I will speak with you soon. Peace. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Not available in all states. Terms apply. See the Fanatics Sportsbook app.